One, hospital occupancy. I think if I remember in previous weeks, you'd mentioned a figure of 95%. I don't think you gave us a figure there. I wonder if you have that figure. And secondly, Sir Keir Starmer is the latest person to express concerns about the Scottish Parliament's gender legislation. Stephen Flynn this morning describing it as an outrage if that is blocked. Is it really an outrage if people use the established mechanism to try to resolve potential conflict in the law set out in the Scotland Act 1998?
Firstly, on hospital occupancy, the figure hasn't really changed since last week. Some of the feedback from NHS boards would suggest, if anything, it is very marginally higher than it was last week, but it is broadly in the same, which is why I said, if that figure had changed much, I would have given it, but it is broadly in. And hospital occupancy, because of the flow of patients, will probably take longer to start to reduce than accident and emergency waiting times, for example. So these things are all interconnected. Yes, I think it would be an outrage. You refer to established procedures, of course, in respect of Section 35 of the Scotland Act, a procedure that has not been used in almost a quarter of a century of the existence of the Scottish Parliament. In my view, there are no grounds to challenge this legislation. It is within the competence of the Scottish Parliament. It doesn't affect the operation of the Equality Act. And it was passed by an overwhelming majority of the Scottish Parliament after very lengthy and very intense scrutiny by MSPs of all parties represented in the Parliament. So if there is a decision to challenge, then in my view, it will be quite simply a political decision. And I think it will be using trans people, already one of the most vulnerable, stigmatised groups in our society, as a political weapon. And I think that will be unconscionable and indefensible and really quite disgraceful. There is a bigger issue of principle here, and I'll come on to Keir Starmer's comments in this context. And that issue of principle is the right of the Scottish Parliament to legislate within its areas of competence. And if we see a challenge this week, then we will be seeing yet more evidence from this UK government of complete contempt for the Scottish Parliament and for devolution in principle. And I would say to anyone who might welcome that because they disagree with this particular piece of legislation, if the UK government is able to normalise action to block legislation democratically passed by the Scottish Parliament within our areas of competence on this issue, then that will embolden them to look to do it on other issues, and we will be on a very, very slippery slope indeed. So I think it is that serious, and I think the import and significance of this would go beyond the particular subject matter of the legislation. Finally, on